So moving from telling to asking. And I think it's important to note that not all asking is equal. And so when we move from telling to asking, and I've made this mistake a few times, is that make sure that we're not asking a leading question, right? So, how would it sound to take this approach? Like I'm still giving you the answer, but I'm putting it in the form of a question. So I think that it's not just any kind of asking. What makes a question curious? What
Mhm,
keeps us in learner mindset as you
mhm,
invited that into this conversation?
mm. Hi, and welcome to the Pause Before You Lead. I'm Alicia Saint.
And I'm Heather Haig.
Together, we've both led teams inside large organizations, and over the past decade, we've coached and partnered with hundreds of leaders and teams navigating complexity. We've seen, felt, heard, and supported leaders through the challenging and sometimes really messy parts of leadership. And while a lot has changed, many of the patterns that quietly take leaders off track just keep showing up.
We work with leaders who don't want to lose momentum, but who know that clearer thinking is what makes momentum sustainable. This podcast is for leaders who are moving fast, leading teams, and making decisions under constant pressure. And leaders who know there's a better way to think, lead, and respond in those moments.
Each week, we bring you real conversations drawn from our work with leaders and teams, where speed matters, stakes are high, and the quality of your thinking shapes everything. So in each episode, we're going to pause, just long enough to think more clearly, to see what's really going on, make better decisions, and build high-value teams.
Whether you're listening before the day takes over, on your way to work, or in the middle of a full day, this is your pause without losing momentum. So, before we begin, take a breath and join us. Welcome to the Pause Before You Lead. I'm Heather Haig,
I'm Alicia Saint.
and today we're talking about something that we've been seeing a bit of a pattern with our conversations with clients of late. Leaders coming in frustrated, and the frustration seems to be the result of conversations they're having over and over with the same direct report or the same peer, someone that they're working with, and they feel frustrated because despite numerous conversations, nothing is changing.
Yeah, yeah, you hear that. I remember, I remember that person too, right? Like, why aren't they getting it? Like, what
Yeah.
what aren't they getting? How many times do I have to say this? Um,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
How many like I feel it too, right? I can feel that sense of frustration that I know I had particularly in certain circumstances. And I think here's the part that maybe is hard to hear, because where we naturally go when we're faced with those challenges of the repetitive conversations is the assumption that we need more clarity. Like, I even think about with my children where I'll say things 3 or 4 different ways because clearly they aren't getting it, and right? And so it must be I'm not being clear. And and more often than not, it may be actually how I'm showing up in that conversation versus whether I'm being clear or not. I see
Mhm,
you smiling as I say that.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. 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 I'm sure we all can relate to this one, right? All of us have a conversation that comes to mind probably pretty quickly, a
Mhm.
frustrating conversation. And if I may invite us, just before we jump into this juicy topic, I'm going to invite us for a pause, just for a moment, as you're recalling that frustrating conversation, perhaps that you just had. Um, Maybe it was just as you were leaving the house this morning. um, just to take a breath and just notice where that frustration from that conversation lives. Where do you feel it in your body?
Oh my gosh. For me, it's in my shoulders. When I'm frustrated, they tighten right up, almost like my shoulders are touching my ears. How
Mhm.
about for you?
Mhm. Yeah. Often, and, I notice in my throat, like, my throat will
Mhm.
tighten, um, sometimes I can't quite get the words out, so, um and then the thoughts come, right? "Well, what's wrong with them? Why don't they get it? I don't have time for this. We don't have time for this. If they just paid more attention, if they just," right?
Mhm.
And so just if you imagine for a moment, right, you can feel that frustration, you know where it's sitting in your body. And just if you let it go, just it's a cloud that's passing by for a moment. Just to be able to bring yourself back to that moment where, okay, I'm going to have a redo. Just try this
Yeah,
again.
I appreciate that because I think a natural occurrence is even when we come at that conversation from a different approach, we're carrying the frustration forward into the next conversation, right?
Mhm,
So if we're not letting go
mhm,
of what's happened up till now, we might be bringing all of that weight or all of that blockage in the throat into that next conversation, and we're going to
mhm,
just keep recreating the same outcome. So
mhm,
maybe we start by unpacking this a little bit, starting to look underneath the surface level of this frustrated conversation when leaders come in saying, I've already told them what to do. I don't know how to be more clear. And I think again, I relate to this so well because it's like this. I've said it as many different ways as I can think of, and I'm still not seeing a change.
mhm, mhm. And when you really sort of listen underneath that, right, you can really hear a few things, right? One is the telling, one is helping, right? Like, I'm really trying to help them, like,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, so you can hear underneath it. It's like I'm telling from a helping place, from I want to fix, I want to rescue, I want to um and the telling can also be from a place of like, we just don't have time for this. Like, just you know, and there might be some assumptions under that, right? Like, why aren't you getting this? What
Yeah.
are you missing? Right?
Yeah, and it's hard because there's that almost pull to telling that says, "Well, wasn't I promoted because I have
Mhm.
expertise? Wasn't I put in this position because people see me as the person that knows this the most?" And so, naturally the default is I know what to do, so just let me tell you. It'll be faster. You talked about speed, but also I I know that's why I'm in this manager chair or leader chair, whatever the title is. And the hardest part of that, and for me as a recovering expert, if we were to go go that far, is that the expertise that got me into leadership was the very thing that prevented me from raising other people up, right? So the things that got recognized and ticked all the boxes that got me to that seat were not going to be the things that were going to carry me forward from there.
Yeah. Because when you stay an expert, there's so much value you take from that, right? So much is in your identity. I'm the boss. I'm supposed to know. That's my job. I give direction. I give clear direction, right? I
Yes.
can see a path. We just gotta follow me. I know where we're going, right? So you tell, you fix, you direct. It's very much being an expert. I know.
Yeah, I've been there. You
I've
like
been
you just
there.
said, I've been down this path, right? So there's this sort of this sense of knowing better than the other person, and not in a competitive way, but in a truly good intentioned way that is, let me lead you so you
Mhm,
don't have to make the mistakes I made in getting here. Let me
mm,
help you get there faster.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
Unfortunately, even though the best of intentions, it can cause people to feel disengaged or disempowered, right? Like my ideas don't matter. So even though my intention is to help that person, they might feel like, well, why should I even bother coming forward with any ideas? Um, y- the other thing that I noticed is like when I'm telling, I get a lot of nodding. So I assume agreement,
mhm,
but maybe the inner dialogue for that person is just hurry up and finish and then I can go back and do my work.
mhm.
And often, because none of us really like to be told what to do, there's that sort of parent-child dynamic that's not helpful in the workplace, and people get resistant to being told.
Mhm. A and, I think there's also a couple things in here that we've talked about before, right? This pressure of time, right? That it feels like it's faster.
Yeah.
I know, so let me just tell you. And then, yeah, and accountability, because okay, if you know, well, I'll just do what you say. And if it goes wrong, not my idea.
Mm. Oh my gosh, you just hit on something so important, which is if I can just come to you and you can just tell me, and so it's faster for me to just come and get the answers from you. And if it doesn't work out, it's not my fault.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a quick trap, I think, that, many of us fall into.
So we can assume mistakenly that there's alignment. We
Mhm,
can assume that they're committed. They're going to deliver on what we said. And the nodding wasn't agreement. It was just let's finish this so we can move along.
mhm,
Right. So
mhm,
so if expert isn't working, what's the shift?
mhm. It's bringing in, curiosity, right? If it's and sometimes expert works, right? So we're not saying it's not an all or nothing, right? Sometimes expert is required, right?
Yes.
If it's something new, if you have a new employee, clear direction is really, really important. And noticing when the conversations just keep happening over and over again and there doesn't seem to be a change or it doesn't seem to be movement or enough movement, right? So then it's like, huh, okay, take the pause. Huh, what else could I try? If I notice the frustration, I notice, wow, I'm doing a lot of telling. Maybe try a little curiosity. Maybe think about stepping into the shoes of being more of a learner, more, huh, what could I ask here?
Mm. Hmm. So moving from telling to asking. And I think it's important to note that not all asking is equal. And so when we move from telling to asking, and I've made this mistake a few times, is that make sure that we're not asking a leading question, right? So, how would it sound to take this approach? Like I'm still giving you the answer, but I'm putting it in the form of a question. So I think that it's not just any kind of asking. What makes a question curious? What keeps us in learner mindset as you
Mhm,
invited that into this conversation?
mhm. Yeah, probably one of the guiding principles is as open as possible, right? Because really what you're trying to do is gather more information to unlock this frustration, right? So it could be, what have you tried?
Mm.
What do you think is getting in the way? What else might work here?
You know what instantly happens when those questions are posed is if I'm being asked that, is my part in finding a solution,
Mhm.
right? So just as the leader shifts from the telling into this that curiosity of what have you tried, really puts the responsibility on the other person to be participatory in this conversation,
Mhm.
right? Like I can't go, well, you tell me. Like when you ask me what I've tried, I've got to respond
Mhm.
with something indicating I've made some effort at this point. Otherwise, I'm probably gonna go back to my desk and think I better
Mhm.
try a few things before I come back, seeking answers.
Mm, mhm.
Yeah, so
And I think too the question, like, what might be missing is a great way to invite, that person to say, actually, what I've been thinking about is I'm wondering about this, right? And all of a sudden there's a door that opens and there's an opportunity for them to offer something that maybe they've been afraid to bring up because your direction has been maybe polar opposite, or maybe your direction has been just going down a different path. And so what might we be missing I think it's a great curious question just for both of you to go, wow, what if we turn
mhm.
this thing on its head?
Yeah, I'm feeling a sense of space. I'm feeling ownership by
Joint,
you
yeah,
posing those
joint.
questions to me, and
Mhm.
I'm also feeling like there's more than one answer,
Yes.
right? Which when we're
Ta-da!
telling, there's limited possibilities.
Mm,
It's interesting because I there's an old adage that popped into my head as you were talking about those questions, and it's, the teaching someone to fish, not fishing for them, and
mhm,
how empowering it can be when someone starts to believe in their own resourcefulness. Like when you can help someone on your team see that they can come up with their own answers and how that might lead to them operating differently the next time they face a challenge.
mhm,
So
mhm,
there's so much just in that one little piece of what have you tried, what might work, what might be missing.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, and
So
another, adage maybe, or I don't know if that's the right word. Anyways, that came up for me was the idea of like slowing down to go faster. If you just slowed down the conversation and stopped getting so busy telling and created just that space, like for those three questions. Wow. What what might you actually accelerate because a new idea comes to the table? Um, that could unlock something.
well, and it's interesting because I could feel the tension leave my body when you sort of invited the pause versus the tension of the fast, everything has to happen so fast. And isn't that the trap, right? Because so
Mhm.
often as leaders, we're all told that speed is the thing
King.
that
Queen.
matters.
Yeah.
And so if we just tell them we'll all get there faster, but the having the conversation over and over again, even if it feels like it's fast, is taking up so much energy.
Yeah.
And it actually probably, if you measure the amount of time of repetitive conversations, it's taken more time, even though it felt fast in the moment,
Mhm.
right? Where a slowing down of the conversation will save you time in the long run, even though it feels like it's not moving at the same pace.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep, for sure.
And there's maybe even something even deeper. And Alicia, I know you and I are driven by different drivers, so I want to hear for you what shows up. But something underneath that expert and underneath sort of the fast and the speed is control. And I don't think that I certainly know for me, and I don't think many of the leaders that I work with have that as a conscious driver, but the desire to control the outcome, to get get our people to do things a specific way or done what we would perceive as the right way, sometimes is also showing up in those conversations.
Mhm.
How I see you smiling as as I say that. Uh,
Oh my gosh, that was my, most of my corporate leadership life. Um, I felt like I knew the answer. I knew where we were going. That was my job. I had to lead the team there, right? And it was perfection, right? It had to be a certain way. Oh my God. So you're the recovering expert. I'm the recovering perfectionist, right? Um, And also this place of, like, really just wanting to help, thinking that
mhm.
I'm coming in to fix things. I'm coming in to, make things better and help people and help them see what they can't see. Oh my gosh, I'm making myself ill just thinking about it. But
Well,
it was not having the aware just wasn't having the awareness, right? That actually all I was trying to do was drive to one answer. It's just one answer. It's just one perspective, right? It doesn't mean it's the only one, and in that perfection, you're either driving yourself crazy, or you're driving your team crazy, or you're all going crazy, right? So, this idea of just getting curious and even I know working with leaders, it's like, what's good enough?
mm, such a
What's
good question.
good
What is good
enough?
enough?
What's good enough? Like, the telling is just like, oh my God, it's so exhausting. If they don't get it, i- what's good enough? Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
So, what does it look like to do this differently?
yeah, yeah. It's the pause. It's the pause before you have that next conversation, the one that has been challenging, the one that is frustrating. Have the pause and ask yourself, who am I in this conversation? What am I contributing? What's my
Mhm.
role in this? What's the energy I'm bringing? Because if you bring frustration, that's a pattern that's just going to come into the room with you, right? It's going to come into the conversation with you.
Yeah,
What if
yeah.
it's a brand new conversation? What if it feels like you just turn the page,
Just flip that page over.
flip the page and
Got a
say,
blank page in front of us.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that sounds
I know.
so simple, not always easy. Um, and sometimes I've found it helpful to think about what do I really appreciate about the person in front of me? So if it's
Mhm,
hard to let go of those 5, 7 conversations you've already had, repetitive conversations, it's hard to not come into that next conversation frustrated. Sometimes the shift can come from just thinking about what do you really appreciate about that person?
mhm,
What's one thing that one strength that you can be thinking about consciously as you come into that conversation? And that shifts the energy into
mhm,
curiosity.
mhm. Another thing that I find works is, what's the common ground?
Mm,
Right? What do we, because often you're both working towards the same end goal, right? And so if you can
yes.
remind yourself, okay, we're actually both trying to, get to the same place. It's just right now we're taking two different paths. Okay.
Yeah. I think of that sort of visual of instead of sitting across the table, sitting on the same side of the
Mm,
table and looking at the
yeah.
problem like what's the
Together.
thing we're trying
Yeah.
to fix together? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great suggestion. Yeah. Because,
And what I know about my own recovering expert journey is that it feels awkward in the beginning, doesn't it? Like
yeah.
it can feel clunky, it can feel challenging to show up differently than we have previously. It's hard to break old patterns because we've got these very deep embedded neural pathways that are so easy to follow almost effortlessly, mindlessly, especially when we're in that fast pace that we were talking about.
Mhm.
So just inviting when you're trying on something new to be okay with it not feeling natural, that it may feel a little difficult.
Because you're building a new pattern, a new neural pathway, and it's just practice, right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's a question instead of a tell.
Yeah. It's when we ask questions in the same way when you posed those questions earlier, it you're we're inviting the other person to think,
Yeah.
right? And perhaps that's a great definition of leadership is just where we stand in that space and we allow another person to come up with answers that are going to work for them.
Mhm. And probably work for everyone because the
Yeah.
frustration's surely not working.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, if you're having the same conversation again and again,
Yeah.
if this is something you're relating to as you're listening to our exploration this week on shifting from telling to asking, take this moment to pause
Mhm.
and ask yourself if I were to lead this conversation differently, what would that look like? Yeah. How to stop repeating, trying to say the same thing with more clarity and come at it with curiosity. Mhm. So,
Imagine that frustrating cloud just floating on by.
mm,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep. So join us next time for our next conversation, our next real life, situation on the pause before you lead.
We'll see you next week.
Have a great week.
Thanks for joining the Pause Before You Lead. If this conversation sparked something for you, share it. Because more leaders need space to think clearly in the moments that matter.
Follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and let us know what's on your mind. We shape these conversations for you.
Before you move on to what's next, pause. Just for a moment.
And notice what might change if you led from here.